Oh my God.
The sun was falling down behind the mountains. Long red shadows stretched across the dusty ground. An old man sat on the porch of his ranch house. His name was Miguel. He was 78 years old, and his face was brown and wrinkled like old leather. His hands were big and strong, but they shook a little now when he held things. Miguel looked out at the empty desert in front of him. He had lived here for 53 years. 53 years in the same house. He knew every rock on the land. He knew every path where the horses walked. He knew the names of the wind when it came from different directions. But today, something felt different. In his old hands, Miguel held a book. Not just any book. This was a journal. A very old journal. The pages were yellow like old bones. The leather cover was cracked and falling apart. Some words had faded so much you could not read them. But Nigel could read every word. He had read them 1,000 times. This journal belonged to his grandfather. His grandfather's grandfather. It had traveled through 7 generations. It was older than the ranch. Older than the town nearby. Maybe even older than the stories people told. Miguel opened the book to a page he loved most. His eyes, blue like the desert sky, looked at the words written in old handwriting. The white horse came from the water when the stars aligned. It carried our family's soul. It never died. It only vanished. One day it will return. When it does, someone will be waiting for it. Someone will understand. Someone will be brave enough to protect it. The words were written in Spanish, but Miguel understood them perfectly. He had read them so many times that they lived inside his heart. The mystery that lived for 700 years, 700 years. That is how long the horse had been gone. 700 years is a long, long time. It is so long that people forget. The old stories become like dreams. The old songs become like wind that nobody remembers hearing. But in Miguel's family, they never forgot. Every child, when they became old enough, heard the story. The story of the white horse. The story of the family's heart that walked on 4 legs. The story said that the horse was not like other horses. It was bigger. It was stronger. It was special. It had a light inside it, like the light inside a person's soul. When you touched it, you felt safe. When you looked at its eyes, you saw something that was older than the world. But then, one day, the horse disappeared. The old journal told the story. A war came to the land. Bad men came on horses. They wanted to steal the sacred horse. They wanted to take the power that lived inside it. The family was broken. Some people died. Some people ran away. And the horse? The horse ran into the sea. It went into the water and never came back. The family waited for years. They waited on the shore and called the horse's name. But the horse never answered. It never came back. After a long time, people stopped looking. They stopped believing. They said the horse was dead. They said the story was not real, just an old dream. But Miguel's family never stopped believing. They wrote the story down. They taught their children. They kept the journal safe. And they waited. For 700 years, they waited that the signs begin. But 3 days ago, something strange happened. Miguel heard about it from a fisherman who came to the town. The fisherman's name was Carlos. He was Miguel's friend since they were boys together. Carlos had a small boat. He worked on the ocean every day. Miguel, Carlos said, and his voice was shaking. I saw something. Something that cannot be real. They sat in Miguel's kitchen. Carlos drank water because he was very nervous. He told Miguel about the ocean. He said the water started to move strange. The waves became very big, bigger than any storm wave he had ever seen. The sky was not dark. It was not a storm, but the water was moving like something big was under it. What do you think it was? Miguel asked him. I do not know, Carlos said, but it was big. Very, very big. and it was moving toward the shore, toward the land where the cliffs are high. I have been fishing the ocean for 40 years. I never saw anything like it. Miguel's heart started to beat fast. He listened to more stories from other fishermen. They all said the same thing. The water was moving. Something big was under it. It was white, or maybe it was silver. It was shining in a strange way, and it was coming toward the land. The journal opens that night. Miguel could not sleep. He sat on his porch. The stars were very bright above him. The desert was quiet. Nothing moved. But Miguel felt something moving inside him. Something was waking up. Something that had been sleeping for a very long time. He opened the old journal again. He read the words about the white horse. He read about the family. He read about the promise that was made so many years ago. The promise said that when the stars aligned correctly, the horse would return. It would come back to the land. It would come back for someone who needed it. Miguel looked up at the stars. They were different tonight. He did not know much about stars. But tonight, they seemed to make a pattern he had never seen before. They seemed to form a shape, the shape of a horse. Is it possible? Miguel whispered to the night. The desert did not answer. The question that changes everything, Miguel held the journal to his chest. His old heart was beating strong. His old hands were not shaking now. They were steady. He felt young again. He felt alive again. One question lived in his mind. One question that nobody had asked for 700 years. What if the horse never died? What if it only left? What if it has been waiting somewhere in the water for someone to remember it? What if it is coming back now? These questions were like a light in the darkness. These questions were like hope. They were like magic. Miguel looked out at the desert and the mountains and the sky. He looked toward the distant ocean that he could not see, but he could feel. If you are coming back, Miguel said softly to the empty air, I will be ready. My family has been ready for 700 years. We never stopped believing. The wind moved across the desert. It was a small wind, but it felt warm. It felt like an answer. Miguel went inside his house. He placed the journal on the table. He lit a candle next to it. The candle made the old pages shine in the darkness. And he waited. For the first time in 700 years, the family was waiting again. The land was waiting. The desert was waiting. And something in the distant ocean was also waiting. Waiting for the moment when magic and real life would touch each other. Waiting for the moment when an old promise would finally come home.
The sun was very hot that day. It was the hottest day of the summer. The sky was white with heat. Even the birds did not fly. They sat under the shade of the trees and did not move. Miguel was working near the fence when he saw the man coming down the road. The man was walking, not riding a horse. He carried a small bag on his back. His clothes were old and torn. His shoes had holes in them. He was very thin. His face was covered with dust from the road. Miguel could not see his eyes because they were hidden under the shadow of an old hat. But Miguel could see his hands. The hands told a story. They were big hands, strong hands, but they were cut and burned and scarred. These were the hands of a man who had worked hard his whole life. These were the hands of a man who had suffered. The stranger walked slowly. He did not look to the left or right. He did not look at Miguel. He just walked down the road like he was walking through a dream. Like he did not care where he was going. Like maybe he did not care if he ever got anywhere. Miguel watched him for a long time. Then Miguel did something. He walked to the fence and called out, You, the man on the road, are you hungry? The stranger stopped walking. He stood very still for a moment. Then slowly, he turned and looked at Miguel. Miguel could see the eyes now. They were gray eyes, empty eyes, like the eyes of a person who had lost something very important and was still looking for it. But the man's eyes did not look angry. They looked tired, so very tired. I have some food, Miguel said, and water. Come to the house. The man named Thomas. The stranger's name was Thomas. He did not tell Miguel his name right away. Miguel gave him water first. Thomas drank the water very slowly. He drank like he was tasting it for the first time. Then Miguel gave him food. Thomas ate slowly too, slowly and carefully, like the food might disappear if he ate too fast. They sat on the porch in the shade. The heat was less strong there. A little wind moved through. After Thomas finished eating, Miguel asked him a question. "Where are you going?" Thomas did not answer for a long time. Then he said, "I do not know. Does it matter?" Miguel understood. This was a man who was lost. But he was not lost because he did not know the way. He was lost because he had nowhere to go. "Do you have a family?" Miguel asked. "No," Thomas said. "I had one, but I lost them." "How did you lose them?" "I failed them," Thomas said. His voice was very quiet, like wind through empty houses. "I had a farm. It was small, but it was mine. I worked hard every day, every single day for 10 years. But then the weather turned bad. No rain came for months. The crops died. The animals died. And I could not pay the people I owed money to. So the farm was taken away." Thomas looked at his scarred hands. "My wife left. She said I was not strong enough. She said she did not want to be with someone who could not take care of her. She went to the city with another man, a man who had money." Miguel listened. He did not speak. He just listened. After that, Thomas continued, "I had nothing. I worked on other people's farms. I did anything I could, but I could not stop thinking about my own farm, about my own horse. I had a horse. His name was Shadow. He was the only friend I had left. He was old and slow, but he was my friend." Thomas stopped talking. "What happened to Shadow?" Miguel asked softly. "He got sick, very sick. There was no money for a doctor. So I watched him get weaker and weaker. One day he just did not wake up. I sat next to him for a whole day. Then I buried him in the ground." Thomas's hands were shaking now. "After Shadow died, I did not care about anything anymore. I did not care if I ate. I did not care if I slept. I just walked. I walked for months, from one town to another, looking for work. But every place I went, I remembered Shadow. I remember my wife. I remember my farm. And I felt empty, the gift that no one understands." Miguel did not offer Thomas money. He did not offer him a place to sleep, not yet. Instead, Miguel said something different. "I have horses, many horses. They're in the field behind the house. They are wild. They do not like people. Would you like to see them?" Thomas looked at Miguel like he did not understand the question. "You want me to see your horses?" Thomas asked. "Yes," Miguel said. "Come." They walked to the field. There were 8 horses in the field. Some were brown. Some were black. One was gray. They were eating grass in the sun. When they saw Miguel and Thomas, they looked up. Some of them moved away. They were nervous. They did not trust people very much. Miguel showed Thomas the fences and the water and the place where the horses slept at night. Then he said, "The horses do not like people. They need a lot of work. They need someone who understands them. But I am old. My body does not work like it used to." Miguel paused. "Do you want to stay here? Do you want to work with the horses? I will give you food and a place to sleep. The work is hard, but maybe you could learn to love them." Thomas did not answer. Instead, Thomas walked toward the horses. The horses moved away from him. They were afraid. But Thomas did not try to grab them or chase them. He just stood very still. He stood in the middle of the field and did not move. He just looked at the horses, and he made a sound. Not a word, just a soft sound, like the sound of wind, like the sound of rain coming. Something magical happened. The horses stopped moving. They looked at Thomas. One by one, they came closer. Not fast, slowly, carefully. The gray horse came first. It walked right to Thomas and put its head against his chest. Thomas put his hand on the horse's neck, and something changed inside him. His face changed. His shoulders changed. For the first time since he arrived, Thomas looked like he might smile, like maybe there was still something inside him that was not broken. Miguel watched from the fence. He understood what he was seeing. This man had a gift. This man could speak to horses in a language that had no words. This man could give love to horses because he had so much love to give. Love that had no place to go. Love that had been waiting for a home. Miguel's heart knows. That night, Miguel gave Thomas a room in the ranch house. The room was small. It had a bed and a window. The window looked out at the field where the horses were. Thomas stood at the window for a very long time. He watched the horses in the darkness. And Miguel knew that Thomas would stay, not just for one night, But for a long time, the next morning, Thomas was already in the field when the sun came up. He was not riding the horses. He was not doing work. He was just standing with them, touching them, talking to them in very quiet words that only the horses could hear. And the horses loved him. They followed him like he was their leader, like he was the only person in the world that mattered. Days passed. Weeks passed. Thomas became stronger. His face became less tired. His hands, though they were still scarred, became gentle. The horses that had been wild and afraid now came to him like children to their father. One evening, Miguel called Thomas to the porch. "I want to show you something," Miguel said. He brought out the old journal. Thomas's eyes grew very big when he saw it. "This is the story of my family," Miguel told him. "This is the story of a sacred horse. A horse that is more than just a horse. A horse that is coming back to us." Thomas read the words slowly. When he finished, he looked at Miguel. "It is real," Thomas said. "Not a question, but a knowing." "How do you know?" Miguel asked him. Thomas touched his chest where his heart was. "I feel it here, like something calling you home after you have been lost your whole life." Miguel smiled. He knew then that this broken man was not an accident. He was waiting, not for a job, not for food, but for a reason to live again. And that reason was coming. Thomas could not sleep that night. He lay in his bed and looked at the ceiling. The room was dark, but he could not close his eyes. Something was moving inside him, something he could not name. It felt like electricity. It felt like his heart was beating in a different way, like his whole body was waiting for something that was about to happen. He got out of bed and went to the window. The night was strange. The sky was not clear, but it was not cloudy either. It was like the sky was holding something, like the sky was full of energy, full of waiting. The wind was blowing hard, but it was not a normal wind. It was warm. It was moving in circles. It was moving toward the ocean that Thomas could not see but could feel. Thomas put on his clothes and shoes. He did not think about what he was doing. He did not make a plan. His feet just moved. His body just moved, like something was calling him, like something in the distance was saying his name. He walked down the stairs very quietly. Miguel was asleep. The ranch was quiet, only the sound of the wind moving through the trees. Thomas walked toward the cliffs. The cliffs were 2 miles away from the ranch house. He had never gone there before, but tonight he knew the way. His feet knew the way. It was like he had walked this path 1,000 times before, like his body remembered a journey that his mind had never taken. The storm arrives. Halfway to the cliffs, the storm came. The lightning came first. It was not far away. It was right above him. The sky split open like someone tore the world in half. The light was so bright that Thomas could not see anything. It was brighter than the sun. It was brighter than fire. Then came the thunder. It was not a sound. It was a feeling. It moved through his whole body. It shook his bones. It shook the ground under his feet. The thunder came after the lightning, but Thomas did not care. He just kept walking toward the cliffs. The rain came like an ocean falling from the sky. It came so hard that Thomas could not breathe. It came so fast that he could not see in front of him. His clothes became wet. His face was covered with water. But he did not stop. He could not stop. Something was pulling him forward. Something was saying, "Come. Come now. Come to us." The wind screamed. It was a sound like nothing Thomas had ever heard. It was like the wind had a voice. Like the wind was alive. Like the wind was telling him to hurry. To move faster. To come to the edge of the cliffs where the ocean was waiting. The impossible sight. Thomas reached the cliffs. He stood at the very edge where the rocks went down into the darkness. Below him, the ocean was moving like a living thing. The waves were not normal waves. They were huge. They were tall like mountains. They were moving in a way that waves never move. They were moving up and down. They were moving in circles. They were moving like they were dancing. And then Thomas saw it. At first, it was just a shape in the darkness. A white shape moving under the water. A shape so big that Thomas could not believe it was real. The shape moved closer and closer to the shore. It moved through the waves like the waves were not there. Like the waves did not matter. The lightning came again. And in the light of the lightning, Thomas saw the horse. He could not move. He could not breathe. He could not think. The horse was coming out of the water. It It was the most beautiful thing that Thomas had ever seen in his whole life. Its coat was white, so white that it shined like moonlight, like silver, like stars. The rain fell on its coat, but the coat did not get dark. It stayed white. It stayed bright. The horse was enormous, bigger than any horse Thomas had ever seen, bigger than 5 normal horses. Its legs were thick like tree trunks. Its body was like a mountain made into the shape of a horse. Its mane was long and it moved like water moving, like liquid light moving in the wind. But it was the eyes. When the lightning came again, Thomas could see the eyes. They were not the eyes of an animal. They held something else. They held time. They held memory. They held knowledge that was older than the world. When Thomas looked into those eyes, he saw 700 years. He saw centuries of waiting. He saw oceans and storms and darkness and loneliness. He saw a promise that never broke. The call. The horse made a sound. It was not a whinny like normal horses make. It was deeper. It came from somewhere far below the ground. It came from the center of the earth. It was the sound of the wind and the ocean and the sky all mixed together into one voice. And the horse looked directly at Thomas. It saw him standing at the edge of the cliff. Through the rain and the thunder and the lightning, the horse's eyes found Thomas's eyes. Thomas understood. He did not know how he understood, but he understood. The horse was not lost. It had never been lost. It had been waiting in the deep water for 700 years, waiting for the stars to align correctly, waiting for someone to come to the cliffs, waiting for someone to call it home. And now it was here. Thomas took a step forward. He was at the very edge of the cliff now. One more step, and he would fall into the rocks and the water below. But he did not think about that. He could not think about anything except the horse. The white horse that was walking out of the ocean. The horse climbed up the rocks. It moved like water, like liquid light moving. Its huge hooves touched the wet rocks, and the rocks glowed. Where the horse stepped, there was a light that came from inside the earth. The horse climbed higher and higher. The storm was at its strongest now. The thunder was like bombs. The lightning was like fire from the sky. The wind was like a living animal trying to push Thomas off the cliff. But Thomas did not move. He stood very still. He watched the horse climb. The moment of meeting. The horse reached the top of the cliff. It stood very close to Thomas now. So close that Thomas could feel the warmth coming from its body. So close that he could see his own face reflected in its eyes. The horse lowered its great head. It brought its forehead down until it touched Thomas's forehead. When they touched, everything changed. Lightning filled Thomas's mind. Not lightning from the sky, but lightning from inside. Images flooded his mind. Images that were not his. Images that belonged to the horse. He saw a family 700 years ago. He saw a young rider on the horse's back. He saw love and loyalty and a promise made in blood and tears. He saw a man killed in war. He saw the family separated and broken. He saw the horse running into the ocean to protect the family's soul. He saw 700 years of waiting. He saw stars and storms and deep water and loneliness that was so deep it had no bottom. And then he saw himself. He saw himself as the horse saw him. Not broken, not alone, not a failure, but a person who understood loyalty because he had lost everything. A person who understood the meaning of keeping promises through impossible nights. A person worthy. The truth without words. Thomas fell to his knees. Tears ran down his face. Rain mixed with tears. He could not tell which was which. His whole body was shaking. Not from cold. From something much deeper. I do not deserve this, Thomas whispered into the wind. The horse breathed warm air onto his face. In that breath, Thomas felt the answer. He felt that he was wrong. He felt that everyone is worthy of love if they can love truly. He felt that the most broken people understand sacrifice best. He felt that the ones who suffered alone understand the weight of keeping promises. He felt that the horse had chosen him, not because he was strong, but because he had loved a horse named Shadow with his whole heart. And that love had never died. It was still alive inside him. It was still waiting to be given to someone who would understand its value. The white horse stood next to Thomas on the cliff. The storm moved around them, but did not touch them. And Thomas understood that his life had changed forever. Thomas knelt on the wet ground. The rain fell on him. The wind moved around him. But he did not feel cold. He felt warm. So warm. It was like the warmth of the white horse was moving through him. It was moving into his bones, into his blood, into his heart. The horse stood over him, very still, very patient. Thomas looked up at the horse's face. He saw something in the eyes that he had never seen before. He saw himself, not his broken self, not his failed self, but the person he could be, the person he was always meant to be. "What do you want from me?" Thomas asked. His voice was very small, but the horse heard him. The horse made a sound, not a scream, not a whinny, a sound that was almost like talking, almost like a voice that had forgotten how to speak words. The sound moved through Thomas's chest and made his heart beat faster. And Thomas understood, not with his mind, but with something deeper, something that lived in his bones, something that remembered things his body had forgotten it knew, the memory that was not his. Thomas closed his eyes, and the visions came again. But this time they were different. This time they were slower. This time he could see everything clearly. He saw a young man. 700 years ago, the man was riding on the horse's back. They were riding across a beautiful valley. There were mountains in the distance. There were flowers in the field. The man was laughing. The horse was running fast. They were happy, so happy. But then the vision changed. Soldiers came, bad men on horses. They came to steal. They came to take the sacred horse because they wanted its power. They wanted to use it for war. They wanted to use it to hurt people. The young rider fought them. He fought with all his strength. But there were too many soldiers. One by one, his friends fell. One by one, his family was separated. His mother was taken away. His sister was taken away. And the young rider knew he could not win. So he did something brave. He rode the horse into the ocean. He rode down to the cliffs and jumped into the water. The horse did not fight. The horse understood. The horse knew what had to happen. The rider held tight to the horse's mane, and they went down into the deep water. But the horse did not die. The horse remembered its purpose. It remembered its duty. It held its breath, and it carried the rider down and down and down into the darkness. In the deepest, darkest part of the ocean, there was a cave. A secret cave that only the sacred horses knew about. The horse took the rider there. And in that cave, the rider made a promise. The promise was this: I will not let our family die. I will not let our love die. I will not let our story die. I will carry it with me. I will carry it in my heart and in my soul. And when the time comes, when the stars align, I will return. I will find someone who understands, someone who knows about loyalty, someone who knows about keeping promises through impossible nights. And I will give them the gift of our love. Then the rider let go. The rider closed his eyes and let go of the horse's mane, and he sank down into the darkness. But the horse stayed. The horse did not leave the cave. The horse stayed and waited. For 700 years, the horse waited. It did not age. It did not get sick. It did not die. It just waited. It kept the promise alive in its heart. It waited for someone like Thomas. The weight of purpose. Thomas opened his eyes. Tears were running down his face. His whole body was shaking. He understood now. The horse was not looking for a rider. It was not looking for a master. It was looking for a keeper. It was looking for someone to carry its story. Someone to tell the world about the young rider. Someone to keep the memory alive forever. And it had chosen Thomas. Not because Thomas was strong. Not because Thomas was perfect. But because Thomas knew what it meant to lose someone you love. Thomas knew what it meant to be alone. Thomas knew what it meant to carry sorrow in your heart for so long that you forget how to smile. Just like the horse. The horse had been carrying sorrow for 700 years. And Thomas had been carrying sorrow for 5 years. And their sorrow understood each other. I will do it, Thomas said. His voice was stronger now. I will carry your story. I will tell everyone about the young rider. I will tell everyone about your love and your loyalty. I will never let people forget. The horse lowered its head again. This time, it rested its forehead against Thomas's chest, right where his heart was, right where his love was living. And Thomas put his arms around the horse's face. He held the sacred horse like he had held shadow. He held it like he held the only thing that mattered in the world. He held it like he was holding 700 years of loneliness and giving it a home. The first light. The storm was ending. The sky was becoming lighter. Not bright, but lighter. The rain was becoming softer. The wind was becoming calmer. It was like the storm had finished its work. It had brought the horse. It had brought Thomas. It had brought two souls together. Now it was leaving them in peace. And then Thomas saw him. Miguel was coming toward them. He was walking down the path from the ranch. His old legs were moving slowly. His old eyes were very big. He could not believe what he was seeing. Miguel stopped walking. He just stood there and looked at Thomas and the white horse. The horse did not move away. It did not run. It stood next to Thomas like it had always been there, like it had always belonged to him. Miguel walked closer, very slowly, very carefully, like he was walking toward a dream and did not want to wake up. When he reached them, Miguel fell to his knees. "Is it real?" Miguel asked. Thomas nodded. He could not speak. He could only nod. Miguel looked at the white horse. He looked at its eyes. He looked at the way the horse stood next to Thomas. He looked at the way they fit together, like they were two parts of the same thing, like they had always been meant to be together. "You found each other," Miguel whispered. "It found me," Thomas said. "I was lost, and it found me." Miguel reached out his hand very slowly. He touched the horse's neck. Where his hand touched, there was warmth. There was light. There was something that felt like magic. The acceptance. The sun was coming up now. The storm was gone. The sky was becoming blue again. The ocean was becoming calm. The rocks were becoming dry. And Thomas understood that his old life was over. He was not Thomas the broken man anymore. He was not Thomas the failure anymore. He was Thomas the guardian. Thomas the keeper of the sacred promise. He looked at the white horse. "What is your name?" he asked. The horse made that deep sound again, the sound that was almost like speaking, and Thomas understood. The name was too old to be spoken in words. The name was written in the stars. The name was written in the ocean. The name was written in the heart of 700 years of loyalty. But if he had to get a name that people could speak, only one name made sense. "Spirit," Thomas said. "Your name is Spirit." The horse breathed out, and the sound was like yes. Miguel stood beside them and looked out at the ocean. "What happens now?" Miguel asked. Thomas looked at Spirit. He looked at the way the sun was shining on Spirit's white coat. He looked at the way the horse's eyes held ancient knowing and new hope mixed together. Now Thomas said, "I learned how to keep a promise that has been waiting for me my whole life. A promise that is older than my pain. A promise that will make my pain mean something." Miguel put his hand on Thomas's shoulder, and the three of them stood there. An old man, a broken man who was becoming whole, and a sacred horse that had returned from the deep water. The legend was no longer a story written in a journal. The legend was standing on the cliff in the morning sun, and it was just beginning. Thomas was old now. His hair was white like the snow on the mountains. His face had more wrinkles than a desert has grains of sand. His hands moved slowly. His back was bent, but his eyes were still bright, still full of light, still full of the love that had started on a night when a sacred horse rose from the ocean. 50 years had passed. 50 years of walking with Spirit through the empty deserts. 50 years of riding through dusty roads. 50 years of standing in old ranches and silent valleys. 50 years of keeping a promise that was 750 years old. People came from far away to see them. They came from towns and cities. They came in wagons and on horses. They came because they had heard the story of the white horse that rose from the ocean, the story of the broken man who became a guardian, the story of a love that was stronger than death, stronger than time, stronger than anything in the world. Thomas never turned them away. He would stand with Spirit and let people touch the horse's neck. He would tell them a story in his old, quiet voice. He would tell them about the young rider, about the sacred promise, about 700 years of waiting in the deep water. And people would cry. They would cry because they understood something. They understood that loyalty was real. They understood that love never dies. They understood that even the most broken people can become whole if they find the right purpose. The transformation of the broken man. Thomas had changed so much. The man who came to the ranch was a ghost. He was hollow. He was empty. There was nothing inside him but pain. But 50 years with Spirit had filled him with something different. It had filled him with meaning. His scars from the past did not disappear, but they became beautiful. They became proof that he had lived. They became proof that he had suffered and survived. They became proof that even the worst pain can be transformed into something sacred. The other horses on Miguel's ranch loved Thomas. They would follow him everywhere. They knew that this man understood them in a way that nobody else could. They knew that his hands were gentle. They knew that his heart was big enough to hold all of their fears and all of their wildness. But Spirit was different. Spirit was connected to Thomas in a way that could not be explained. They did not need words. They did not need explanations. They just knew each other. They moved together like they were one body. They breathed together like they were one soul. People who watched them said it was like watching magic. The lesson that could not be forgotten. Miguel died when he was 93 years old. On his deathbed, Miguel called Thomas to him. "You have done what I could not do," Miguel said. His voice was very weak now. "You have kept the promise alive. You have made the legend real. You have taken a story from a book and made it live in the world." Thomas held Miguel's hand. "You showed me how," Thomas said. "You gave me a home when I had nowhere to go. You gave me the journal when I did not know why I was alive." Miguel smiled. "The journal was waiting for you. The horse was waiting for you. Everything was waiting for you. You just had to walk down the right road." Miguel closed his eyes and died. And Thomas cried. But he cried knowing that Miguel had seen the promise fulfilled. Miguel had seen the legend become real. Miguel had seen a broken man become whole. The secret that stayed secret. Many people asked Thomas the same question. How can the horse still be alive? How can it not age? How can it be real? And Thomas would always answer the same way. Some things are not meant to be explained. Some things are only meant to be believed in and protected. The horse is not a mystery to be solved. It is a miracle to be honored. Nobody could prove that Spirit existed. Scientists came with their machines and their tests, but Spirit would not let them touch it. Spirit only let Thomas touch it. Only Thomas could feel its warmth. Only Thomas could understand its language. So people started to believe. They believed because they wanted to. They believed because their hearts told them it was true. They believed because in a world full of lies and sadness, here was something that was true and beautiful and eternal. The mystery stayed a mystery, and that was what made it sacred. The final years. Thomas stayed at the ranch his whole life. He never left. He never traveled to the cities. He never looked for anything else. He had found what he was looking for on that night when he came to the cliffs. He had found his purpose. He had found his home. He had found his soul. In his final years, Thomas could barely walk. But every morning, he would go to the field where Spirit was, and Spirit would come to him. The white horse was still as beautiful as the day it rose from the ocean. It did not age. It did not change. It was eternal. It was timeless. It carried 50 years of memories and 700 years of memories mixed together in its ancient eyes. Thomas would rest his head against Spirit's neck, and they would stand together in the silence. No words, no explanation, just two souls that understood each other. A man and a horse, a broken person and a sacred being, connected forever by a promise that would never break. The end of the story that never ends. One morning, people came to the ranch. They found Thomas asleep in the field. He was sitting against Spirit's body. He was not breathing anymore. His long life had finally ended, but Spirit was still there. Spirit was standing over Thomas like a guardian, like a protector. The white horse had not left him. The white horse would never leave him. They buried Thomas in the field, right there where he had died, right there where Spirit had stood watch over him, right there where the sacred promise had lived for 50 years. And Spirit stayed. The white horse stayed at the ranch. It stayed in the field where Thomas was buried. Every day, it would stand in the same place. Every day, it would look down at the grave. Every day, it would make that deep sound, the sound that was almost like crying, the sound that was almost like prayer. Miguel's great-grandchildren took care of the ranch. They took care of Spirit. They gave it water and food. They brushed its coat. They kept Thomas's journal in a place of honor. They told the story to everyone who came. The story of the white horse. The story of the broken man who became a guardian. The story of a love that lived for 700 years and then 50 more. The eternal truth. Years passed, then decades, then 100 years. Spirit never aged. Spirit never left the field. Spirit stayed where Thomas was buried. And people still came. They came from all over the world. They came to see the white horse. They came to touch its neck. They came to feel the warmth that lived inside it. They came because they wanted to believe in something beautiful, something sacred, something that could not be explained. And in the presence of spirit, they found what they were looking for. They found hope. They found the understanding that loyalty is real, that love is real, that sacred bonds never die, that a broken heart, if it opens to purpose, can change the world. The final lesson. This is the story that lived in Thomas's heart and spirit soul. Loyalty never dies. It only waits in darkness, watching for the moment when someone remembers. The most broken people understand sacrifice best. The ones who suffered alone understand the weight of keeping promises through impossible nights. A sacred bond is not something that needs to be explained or proven. It only needs to be protected. It only needs to be honored. It only needs to be remembered. Thomas was broken, but the horse saw something in him that he could not see in himself. The horse saw a person who understood faithfulness because faithfulness was all he had left. And in return, Thomas gave the horse something it had waited 700 years to receive: a home, a purpose, a keeper who would tell the world that loyalty never dies. Some things are not meant to be understood by the mind. Some things are only meant to be felt by the heart. And that is where Spirit and Thomas live still. In every heart that has ever loved truly. In every soul that has ever kept a promise through impossible nights. In the eternal space where two beings meet and recognize each other as home.